LOL, I'm sick, but who gives a damn? Finally, it's happened. King's Dominion, they're building a new roller coaster. Hallelujah, it's been way too long for this. King's Dominion, you know, it felt like they've been screwed over for quite some time. The last major addition they got was in 2018 with Twisted Timbers, and no, I'm not counting Toombili because that's just a 40 free spin, and I don't care for that thing. But the point being, when this opens, it's going to be 7 years since their last worthwhile addition. It did take a while, but the wait is finally over, and in 2025, we are going to be getting a wing coaster named Rapterra. Rapterra, a launch wing coaster that will be the replacement to Volcano the Blast Coaster, one of King's Dominion's signature attractions that closed down in, 2018. So yeah, not only were we waiting for a new ride after Twisted Timbers, we were also waiting for them to finally replace one of their headlining attractions. But the question is, does this live up to the original Volcano? Well, I personally wouldn't know. I never got the chance to ride Volcano the Blast Coaster. I visited the park back in 2019, so a year after the ride was torn down. And even then, I can tell King's Dominion, they were definitely missing one of their headlining attractions. Sure, they did have Twisted Timbers and, of course, I-305, but you know, King's Dominion, they didn't really have the best supporting lineup. Rides like Dominator, I didn't like. Floorless coasters, they were always so mild to me. Rides like Grizzly, rough as shit. And Racer, okay, that's a good supporting coaster, but everything else, it didn't really compare to their top two. And I do think Rapterra is going to be a worthwhile addition. It's really going to make that top 3 for King's Dominion. Now, just to get my hesitations out of the way, when I first heard they were announcing a wing coaster, I was skeptical because wing coasters have never been my favorite design. I find them kind of mild and lackluster, and I feel I have the right to say that because I have ridden every wing coaster in America. The best one is Thunderbird, but even that, after the launch, it just feels like any other wing coaster, so forgive me if I'm not the most optimistic for this ride. But the reason why I think this is such a good fit for King's Dominion is because they really do need a public crowd pleaser. Rides like I-305, that's too intense for the general public, which is one of the main reasons why that ride doesn't even get a line half the time. Twisted Timbers, yes, that ride does have a little more crowd appeal, but it's still in the same league of that ultra intense roller coaster. This is a good middle ground. It's still a high thrill ride, just less extreme, and more inversion heavy, as opposed to focus on airtime or positive G-forces. But to really get an appreciation of what this ride will entail, let's start going over the stats. So, Rapterra, it's got a height of 145 feet. That's going to be around the first turnaround after the first launch. And the ride's going to have over 3 inversions. One's going to be a dive loop, the second one's going to be a corkscrew, and the third one's going to be a 360-degree Raptor roll. Okay, King's Dominion. Now, that's clearly just a Heartline roll, but, you know, have your fun little name, it's fine. But after we get through the high points of the ride, there are a few transition elements. One that I'm excited for is a twisted airtime hill, which, you know, those are pretty fun. There's one already on rides like Thunderbird, so we already know what to experience with that. And there's also going to be a normal airtime hill, which, you know, airtime hills, they can either be hit or miss on the wing coaster. If they're tall and elongated like Gatekeeper's airtime hill, then you're not really gonna feel anything. But if they're hopefully shorter and more poppy like, again, Thunderbird, then you're gonna feel the negative G's a lot more. I'm hoping that's gonna be the case with this ride. And then other elements include moments like the wing slide, which, it's clearly just an overbaked turn, but okay, King's Dominion, I'll let you keep your wacky little terms. And that's about it. All in all, it's not the longest ride in the world. It kind of looks short, but when I'm comparing it to the other wing coasters, it made me realize, oh, damn, this is actually on par, if not a little longer than most wing coasters. The track length is around 3,086 feet. Which, in comparison, Thunderbird, that ride's 3,035 feet. And if we're still comparing it to Thunderbird, that ride goes 60 miles an hour, this one goes 65. And the acceleration for Thunderbird is 3.5 seconds, while Rapterra is in 4 seconds. So just so you know, Rapterra, even though it goes faster, the acceleration isn't as good. Thunderbird can cover a distance of 17.14 miles per hour per second, as opposed to Rapterra, where it could cover only 16.25 miles per hour per second. In other words, Rapterra, it's not covering as much ground in a short amount of time. Will the small difference really impact the launch? Not really. The numbers are pretty small in standard deviation, but it's just something to, think about. But all in all, after looking over the entire layout, is it good? Well, yeah, I guess so. They did an alright job. Could they have done other things, like after the first launch, instead of going into a wave turn, they do like a cutback? Or instead of the 360 Raptor roll, could they have done like an inline twist, because it's already kind of similar to the corkscrew? Yeah, but it's not the end of the world. Plus, the turn after the first launch, I don't think a cutback would have been that much better. We already got a cutback in the park, so at least this adds some kind of variation. Also, I do think you'll get a nice variety in ride experience depending on which side you sit on for this element. Because, if you're on the top, you're going to be whipped across that element over a larger distance, as opposed to the bottom wing, where you're going to be pulled through at a shorter distance. This element kind of experiments with torque, which for those who don't know is force times distance. Something that we kind of don't see on wing coasters, which is ironic considering wing coasters are kind of built behind this principle, seeing as how there are two columns of seats, both on different sides of the train that are a distance away from the center of the track. So no matter what, there should be greater torque and a variation of ride experience depending on where you sit on the train. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Overall, the ride, it looks intriguing, but how does it fit in this section of the park at King's Dominion? Rapterra, it's going in the Jungle Expedition area of the park, which is fairly new. It was just overhauled a few years ago when they opened Toonbilly, and yeah, this area has gotten a lot of TLC. The land, it looks well themed. It definitely looks better than the old version, and I think the roller coaster will add some much needed kinetic energy to the land. Not to mention the theming, it actually looks pretty good. There's a lot of ancient ruins around the ride, a bunch of stone and monolith work. The only thing the ride's missing is a near miss element, because if we look over the POV, I don't see one. Which, that's a big turnoff for a wing coaster. That's like their whole thing. The concept of threading the needle. It just seems like a missed opportunity because King's Dominion, they're actually doing theming, but they don't want to do anything with it. It's a huge loss for them, but there's no use in getting angry over it, so let's just move on. Now, if we go back to observing the theming, it's important to focus on the story behind the theme. Now, the story in question, it's the typical Cedar Fair over-explaining, wacky lore that doesn't make a lot of sense most of the time, and usually doesn't translate that well into the overall presentation of the ride. I'm hoping that won't be the case, but let's just go over King's Dominion's official lore of Rapterra. And it begins. Centuries ago, ancient leaders built a shrine to honor the mighty Jungle Hawk. People who entered the shrine became spiritually linked and temporarily possessed the powers and the abilities of the bird of prey. Okay. Building the temple at the base of the volcano. A volcano. Yeah, that's right. Mount Infura proved unfortunate. The ground surrounding the magma chamber collapsed, bearing the Jungle Hawk temple under mounds of volcanic rock. The temple seemingly vanished from the earth. Archaeologists recently discovered the volcanic site and unearthed the remains of the Jungle Hawk shrine. The bird's ferocious spirit remains at the site, launching brave riders to exhilarating new heights. Rapterra, the world's tallest and longest, yeah, you get the point. Yeah, the story, it's pretty corny, but I do like that they included Volcano, that's always welcome. But how much of this will actually translate into the physical set pieces and the theme of the ride? Who really knows? But if King's Dominion can pull it off, then kudos. But yeah, that is Rapterra. A welcome addition to King's Dominion, and hopefully we'll put this park back on the map for a while. There's finally a new reason for me to go back to this park, so hopefully I'll be able to ride it next year. But for now, I'm sick and I feel like crap, so I'm going back to bed. See ya.